know he hears me. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to start right now in the Curry County Board of Commissioners Administrative Workshop. Call this meeting to order. And I think, Jay, at one time you said we didn't need to do an approval amendment of the agenda on a workshop.
Correct.
We have it here, so we can go right to presentations, right?
So this matter was brought to the attention of the public when we were proposing a modification of the TLT ordinance. And public input made clear that there were outstanding issues regarding the perception of what TLT funds should be used for, and also what, and so then in looking, we went back and you'll notice before you, I've given each of you a little overview of the history of that ordinance. Basically in early 2019, an ordinance was passed that, let's see how, it basically TLT funds, tourists, certain fees were charged on every type of stay in the, a tourist-related stay in the county, and those funds that were generated by the TLT, 70% of net revenue was designated for tourism, and originally the ordinance said, first, subject to Board of Commissioner approval, half shall be allocated to the county fair fund event center account. The remainder shall be administered by a tourism promotions committee appointed by the board. The remaining 30% for general county services, not to exceed 5% of non-tourist revenues may be spent on administration. Balance of non-tourist revenues to fund Curry County Sheriff Patrol deputies. There was a clarifying change made in late 2019 to that ordinance, basically about how the monies were collected and how they were how
Distributed?
well, no, mostly just collected.
Just
the
collected,
collection
okay.
method, it was clarified. Then ordinance 2002 amends the allocation of this happened later, amends the allocation of TLT funds from the original allocation set forth, because I think in that first there was like a year and a half where the monies were coming in, and that was being collected according to that original language. Then 20-02 modified that, and it said first, regarding the 70% that didn't go to the sheriff's office, is amended as follows. First, 15% shall be used to cover staff expenses involved in tourism and marketing, subject to budget committee approval. 40% shall be allocated to the county fair fund. So where it had been 50% to the county fair fund, then it became 40%. Event center account and then language was added for capital improvement projects. If we look back, the first language was subject to Board of Commissioner approval, half shall be allocated to the county fair fund event center account. So there were no basic restrictions on how that could be used. So it was modified to restrict subsequent monies coming into capital improvements. Let's see. So then also it said the remaining 30% for general county services would be modified to say not to exceed 5% of non-tourist TLT revenues may be spent on administration. Balance of non-tourism revenues 25%, which is not correct, to fund Curry County Sheriff Patrol deputies. So that's a scrivener's error, because if you think about it, 5% of the 30% doesn't leave
20.
Yeah, it's just so that's anyway. I think that the original, I'm not aware that the sheriff's been unhappy about what they've been getting, so I think that's straightforward. Let's see. And I think that's where we are as of right now. So, anyways, we look at this. I mean, I had some questions. I've learned a lot about this, but, I'd be interested to hear, we've also got a submission from, Summer Madison regarding, timeline of events relating to the fair and so forth. I think, as I look at that ordinance and how it was modified, I mean, I have some concerns, because it seems like we're adding restrictions and right now we have, money going to, regarding it, as far as the event center account for capital improvement projects. So now, basically, there's no board of commissioner oversight on the use of that money within the language of the statute, and that's concerning to me.
As it sits currently.
As it sits currently, yes.
Just to, but just to rewind, how we got into the workshop was there was an initial request for an adjustment to this to fund some emergency management projects that after review, I think we found didn't fall within the parameters.
If you look at the definition of tourism-related activities,
It doesn't fit.
fall within that. I mean, you don't want to
Right.
be stretching the reality too far. So
Okay.
it's not, the funding will have to come from some other area for that.
Yeah. So I think, once that was realized, we'd had a chance to, I don't know about you guys, but had a chance to really digest this in its entirety. And I agree, after careful review, I think, personally, what I think I'd like to see is essentially the structure of Ordinance 2002, the current structure, but adding the language for the event center fund, adding back the language of per board approval, because as I understand it, I mean, the infrastructure at the air fairgrounds is county property, correct?
Well, the whole,
Well, so the county fairgrounds are owned by the fair board. The fair board owns the ground.
Okay,
They own the ground. There's and they have the sole, according to the MOU between the fairgrounds and this is the way I understand it, between the fairgrounds and the fair board, they have sole authority regarding the maintenance, repair, and so forth of the improvements. What was that?
It comes from the ORSs.
Yeah, well, but we're also, but there's also, I think there's language in our MOU as well.
The language in the MOU comes straight from the ORSs.
Yeah. Yeah, because the ORSs are, regarding county fairs, are super unique.
okay,
It's a lovely word to put it.
okay.
They were clearly written by a bunch of farmers who wanted to maintain control of their
Well, I might be able to
fairgrounds.
make sense of it then, maybe.
No,
No.
probably not.
so, okay, well, that helps clarify in my head one thing. And so, I think, I was brought in, I did a tour of the fairgrounds, on some of the planning and whatnot, and I think they have great plans. I do feel that having that initial bit of language would be beneficial, but ensuring that we don't adjust the current financial structure that we have set up. Now, we do budget and allocate money for the fairgrounds, the personnel.
Outside of TLT?
No.
Okay,
Can you go up to the microphone? Thank you.
thanks, Bob.
Let's not talk out in the audience if we can.
Apologize. Yeah, Bob Chabante, Vice Chair of the Fair Board. Yeah, the Fair Board is responsible for the entire budget of the Fair Board. All the expenditures responsible for all the expenses and authorizing those expenses. Part of the authorization of the BOC is that that fund goes to the event center. They authorize that, then we use it in according to ORS statutes. But we responsible for our own salary, personnel, contracts, and all that. Contracts, when they exceed a certain amount, we take it to county council and make sure it's approved, everything's legit, and then go from there.
Okay, but the money comes from where?
It comes from what we earn for rental income, state lottery, which is a little bit right now, down to that. As of the last few years ago, the county commissioners at that time removed the offset for our insurance expenses. So now we pay for everything with all the money, the little money that we do get at the time. That's why we're trying to improve our income so we can take care of those things. So right now there is no money coming out of the general fund at all for the county fairgrounds.
TLT and a little bit of lottery is it?
Yeah,
And
TLT
whatever
and a little bit
revenues
of
you
lottery.
get.
TLT, so TLT can't be used for general expenses though.
Well, according to ORS statutes, we've checked with a lot of fairgrounds, and they do use it for administration. They do use it for expenses. It's because kind of like you give somebody, 2 gallons of water, they die of thirst because they don't drink it because they're not allowed to use it unless this happens. So when it was originally put together, and I have something I can explain that to you because I was part of the 6 people that put this together to do it originally. So that's where the money comes from, is whatever that we can do and get it. So as far as its expenditures, it was changed, and actually was changed, and you're only supposed to allow to change for an actual stated emergency. You just don't call it an emergency change. It has to be an emergency. And when we were never, the Fair Board was never brought into it when that first discussion was made.
Didn't look like it. Yeah.
No, and we came to the meeting, we asked, find a way to structure like you had the financial structure, because economic development does a great job. They have brought things in and doing it, and they handle it countywide. All we ask is just to take out the restriction for capital improvement, because we know our priority is capital improvement, but we also have to keep the door open. We have to keep a manager there, and we're actually going through content. We just got some new drawings now of our new park and our restroom stuff, so we're really moving fast on developing the grounds as our priority.
So if I can just ask this, Bob, so we, at the first ordinance, we didn't say capital improvements, right?
Correct.
Then we added it for this 2002,
Yes,
and you're asking that we take that out.
and just be used under ORS statutes.
And, and Jay's made a comment about, we'd like to, maybe get the board more involved, and just playing devil's advocate here, I can see that, but I'm also thinking we, as a board, elect or put in place your fair board.
Yes.
And I personally, I don't want to handcuff you folks, but maybe there's a happy medium in the fact that we could, if it's over a certain amount of money, it would come to us. I'm just throwing this out there as discussion, and want to hear from you guys what you think, but we do put in place the board.
Well, I guess this brings me back to my, the original, when I read the original, when I looked at the history, the original thing said 50% to the Fair Board.
50% of the 70%.
50%
Correct.
of the 70%
Yeah.
to the Fair Board, subject to BOC approval.
That would be funded, and then, according to statute, the Fair Board is responsibility for every check that we write, how we spend it. And then we have been, ever since we began, we've been keeping separate records, because the budgeting and stuff reporting is kind of, mixed in together when we do that. We're breaking out, this is what we're using this for, to state, to show that what we are using our TLT money for, our capital improvements project, and getting it all going here. So, yeah, that's the original way it was written, to do that. And then that's the other reason we wrote it that way. And also the portion that was mentioned by the Sheriff's Department, we felt that the whole goal is to increase tourism. You increase tourism, it's going to increase an impact on the Sheriff's Department, so it's only right that the Sheriff's able to have the ability to get 1 or 2 more road deputies. But yeah, as far as the expenditures, it was to approve that the fairgrounds still get that portion, and make sure that we're using it properly, and that's it. But as far as individual, we have a contract out for $5,000. We don't have to come to you to get it because by statute, the Fair Board's responsible for that. It's like you're not telling the library district, even though you collect tax for them, how they're supposed to handle this stuff. So it's kind of the same, but we're not a tax district, but it's similar. Technically, we're supposed to be a governing board.
Yeah.
Right.
So you want to come on up? And I want this to be an open discussion. So if you got a question, raise your hand and, that somebody's, if I don't see you, somebody will, and we'll get to talk to you.
I think that you all have great points, but I think that part of where Commissioner Herzog is in the right there is, it is a county money that, it's dedicated in different areas. But I think that oversight, the approval from the commissioners, that wording, it is important and it is in there for a reason. But I think that maybe that can come during the annual budgeting process. We have a separate fund in our budget for the TLT, and the money all goes to its own fund. And so then every budget year that gets broken down of where we expect to spend it. And so, when we get to that point during the budget process, you guys can look at it and say, do we think this is an acceptable way of spending it? And then, if we have any designs or whatever that we have going on that we can present, at that point it'll show where the money is being planned for. So it kind of provides its own sense of that oversight.
So, stay there for just a second. So, that's actually a really good point, because one of the things that I think is critical, right, is it was a big push to get the TLT passed, right? So I think it's also really important that we are showing our citizens how it's improving, how it's being used and to improve the county. Yeah. So having that, what you just said, so you have this event center fund that your TLT portions go into, and, in your budget, you may say, whatever, 10% of the 50% you receive is towards administrative costs, and this is what we're putting towards infrastructure. Or, like we had discussed, if you guys go out for a bond, that money will probably be utilized to be paying back the bond on a 30-year deal. So I think that system could be really effective.
Well, and the way that fund is broke out is exactly like all the other budget sheets. So it shows all the different lines. It shows all the GL lines of where stuff is specifically getting sent. So it's already public information, and it just makes it a little bit more clear, because originally it actually wasn't in its own fund. We just did that for the first time this last year, because I felt it needed to be tracked separately. And so now it gives us that option to show exactly, where it's being budgeted for administrative, for these utilities, for these project specificals, for these capital outlays. And part of that also is, like, right now we're in the process of redoing the kitchen in Dosha. We're doing a lot of it in-house, so it doesn't necessarily come as a capital outlay because it doesn't reach that dollar amount, as we do individual little pieces of it, because we're saving costs by doing it in-house. But it does provide that clarification of where each piece is being spent, and then it gives you guys the option to approve it or say, we'd rather not spend this much in this area, let's put it back over here, or whatever.
Any other questions?
So right now, who is responsible to make sure that non-capital improvements meet the requirements of ORS Chapter 320?
Well, right now we have a pretty good handle on what the statutes say. We check to make sure everything's fine. If we do have questions, we come in and verify that. A lot of it, we work with economic development because they're doing a bang-up job what they get done, and she's very knowledgeable about that. And we also go back and confirm with the state if we need to do something. So we're all prepared before you come in. But we've a number of years that we've been working on this, so it's kind of clear of how it's supposed to be done.
So right now the responsibility is the Fair Board.
Fair Board, yes.
Okay.
And then when we do our budget, like she said, and the part I didn't get out there is, like she said, that's when we get to see, okay, this is where it goes. We understand that, and then it's our duty to follow that.
So
then is that?
I think the question is, and I think what you were alluding to is, you know, the event center fund, when the annual budgeting comes around for capital improvement projects for that year, they would present that to the BOC, that portion of the budget, for consideration.
Correct.
Use of those funds, and that's essentially getting BOC approval.
Yes.
Which is, I think if we can find a way to articulate that, I think that sets up for long-term success of the use and management and transparency of these funds.
Well, one of the things that I didn't know was that this ordinance had been changed from what the voters voted on. I didn't know that.
Correct.
And that was brought to my attention through taking a very close look at this. I didn't know. And that bothers me. It bothers me that the people voted on something and then it was changed.
And it was changed without input from the affected parties.
Correct.
That's, That's, I mean, whether you like it or not now, that's not cool. And so, I guess, if we're talking about how we're having separate funds and so forth, the way I read this, when there were, how long was it enforced before it was modified?
I think about 14 months.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
modified in fall of
So you brought in like 180 or 160, I can't remember the original amount of money, something.
But it was only a partial year of,
Right.
of revenues.
So that money is subject to the terms of the first of the original ordinance. And that should be in a separate fund. And that separate fund is subject to those terms, you know, that where it says, same thing, at the beginning of the year, or whenever, the subject to board
Right.
BOC approval, that money goes to the county fair board, it's gone there. And there are no real restrictions on that money.
Yeah.
Then the second one,
Removes
that establishes this capital improvements limit,
Right.
which is not a bad idea, but I like it, but the problem is that I don't know that I'm not comfortable with the way, if you guys didn't know about it, it seems like you should have, since you're the recipients, it seems like you would have wanted to be part of the
Change.
conversation.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it happened after, basically, my assumption was they already had one reading of it when it happened, when we cut in here to do it. So we came in and tried to voice that concern about the language. I mean, everything else okay? Our big concern was the language because we need to work together. We understand that we have to work together. And in part of the process, it was very important what Mr. Alcorn had said about the public thing. Is when we put this together, we started in 2018 to put this ordinance together and the ballot measure together. We also worked with the major people who were against the previously failed initiatives. So after months of working out with the opposition, we came to a solution that would fit best for the whole thing. I mean, even one of the people that were opposed wanted the fairgrounds to get everything. We said, no, that's not, don't think that's quite the way we need to do it to get it done. So we put that in place, did that. Then we brought it to the Citizens Revenue Committee, presented to them. They liked the idea. We brought it into the Board of Commissioners and did a PowerPoint presentation. Got that, the language of the measure and the ordinance approved to do that. And then we went out and did 5 town hall meetings and explained to everybody what it was. Hours upon hours of social media time. That's what everybody does stuff, explaining what it meant. So to your point, everybody had the understanding that that measure followed those ordinances, and that's why they voted yes. They had to make sure because they needed transparency and clarity, and that's one of the biggest questions. Well, we don't trust it's going to be transparent. Well, we're putting it out there so it is transparent, so you can see what it is to do that. So that's how it brought together, and we and came up with the language, and it was just that one change about the collecting thing was fine. But yeah, the big thing is that the stakeholders were not involved in this. This was all done in the offices here, and then surprise, here it is.
Okay.
So legally, do we want to go, I mean, can we go back to the original? Or, I mean, you know,
Well, I mean, if there was
what
only one reading, then it wasn't a valid, as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't even a valid action.
not even
But-
a valid
but,
ordinance?
I mean,
or-
we have to decide if that's what we want to do. I look at this, the way that it was just described, that's that's actually, there was a lot of work done. There was a big,
Mhm.
you know, and I get it that they wanted to modify it and tweak it a little bit, but I think the end of your statement was probably the most important thing. That wasn't a transparent way to do that. And
Yeah.
so, and I mean, does it work better now? Maybe, probably, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, if it's, you know, just because you get away with something doesn't mean that it's legitimate. And I think, I mean, I, regarding the issue of, you know, jumping past that, regarding the issue of whether having a capital improvement fund is a good idea or not, I think it's really problematic from what you said earlier, that it's up to you guys whether you know, if that you take money out of something that is designated a capital improvement fund, you know, when you need it.
Right.
I don't like that. I'm never gonna like it. You're never gonna make me like it. I think I think that if that had been passed in such a way that was, you know, and the ORS say, they can say whatever they want. We have an ordinance that says something different. That now I'm finding out, you know,
It's-
isn't very
Oh.
persuasive.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, the idea of having a capital improvement fund, just to make it so that you can make your project work, because normally when you're like, see, I'd never lend you any money if I'm a bank, or you know, if I'm a lender and you come to me and you say I'm making $180,000 a year in TLT funds, and it's going up at this amount, I'd be like, well, have a nice day. Keep saving, because if you're able to invade it and do and cover current expenses that way, then I would never lend you money, because that you'd be a priority credit.
Yeah.
Your wage, you know, your employees and everybody would be a priority to my note, so I couldn't lend you money. So I mean, I like the idea of having a restricted fund that is committed to the amount of money that's coming in, so that you guys can say, what do we need? You know, what do we need for this project? Do we need $30 million? What's it gonna take? Do we have enough cash flow to generate that? If we do, then let's do it. If we don't, then we need to come up with something else on top of this, and then we have a project that works. But just putting money in the bank and hoping for the best, you're gonna be saving forever. And also, when you have a bunch of money sitting around, people like me
start
show
looking
up
for
and
it.
try to figure out ways to steal it. So you want to be
Exactly.
careful. You know, and I mean, down the road, you could have a different group of commissioners in here, and they could say, I mean,
Yeah, change the
you
ordinance.
can see what, I mean, yeah, you can see what can happen. So you want to, so really having something committed so that you could actually lock and load and go and say, this is the amount of money we've committed. You know, that's what's really great when you do a bond for, you know, for a school vote or something. You're not taking that money out for anything else. It's committed to this. And you know, in this case, we'd probably, I think, you know, we have this TLT and it's going to you guys, and I think, you know, this would be an agreement that I tend to think that if we went back to the original agreement, and then the Fair Board made their own restrictions on how that money was designated, then they could take that out, and people would give you $30 million or whatever it is, and then you could get, you know, shoot.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that is, and everybody knows the world ended in 2020. So we that's when we just developed that master plan where we're at. So we just started getting our feet back on together, and we just today and yesterday we have two plans for part of our improvements we're doing to facilities, our RV park, which will be an income producing thing. And I believe when we brought the presentation, based on what the city of Gold Beach provided, they have a revenue for their TLT for their stay and occupancy. Based on that occupancy rate, we should get somewhere between $250,000 to $287,000 a year of income. Not like the $800,000 a year Harbor gets for their RV park, but who knows? We'll see how it goes. But so we try to go on the low end of a 60% ratio, where you had 95% in the summer to do that.
Wait, hold it. Let's go back. What Harbor gets what?
In Harbor's revenues, it shows in their budget, it shows that they have $800,000 in revenues just from their RV park.
Harbor.
Ted used to be the
Harbor
port manager.
Brookings Harbor.
The Port of Brookings Harbor.
Port of Brookings Harbor. Yeah, it's just it's like, ooh, okay, that's pretty nice.
The South Beach.
Yeah, I'd
RV park.
love to get something like that. It'd
Right.
be great. And so that's what we're working for to do, to get that. So we're understanding that. And we're also getting into plans. We're almost pretty close to having our convention center plans put up. And that impact is to bring people down here to do it. It also includes, we just recently got the information, the plans have already been written up about our electric vehicle charging stations, which if you have a company that has 200-300 people in Portland, some of them are going to have EVs. So it's another reason to attract them here to do it. So we're trying to get that in place, and if we could do it sooner with a bond, it'd be fine. But we're getting those plans together, so we're hoping soon. We were hoping 6 months ago to have a presentation with a flyby and show you all that stuff. That here's what we're doing, here's the plans, here's projected incomes to go forward to do that. And it's quite frank, and since it mentioned the city of Gold Beach with going using their numbers for a thing, I would also like to say, and a big appreciation for what the city of Gold Beach had done. They took it upon themselves to increase their TLT, to dedicate it to the fairgrounds, and quite honestly, without that money, we would not have those buildings. It replaced the roof on Dosha, which was leaking like you're taking an indoor shower. Showcase building was falling apart. We originally started just cleaning up the inside. We found out the walls were rotted, the roof was leaking, and do that. So our only sources of income during the period of COVID would have been shot. We probably wouldn't be standing here today to be doing this. So it's like I have respect for the city of Gold Beach for what they did. And they also, we have a project. Here's what it is. They understand what it is, and they say, sounds good. They handle it different, though. We put in for a project. They directly fund it, take care of it, do that, even manage the contracts for it. We just say we have a need. We don't get the money first, so that's why they have total control over what's going on.
It also makes a lot of sense that the city of Gold Beach would do that because the fairgrounds are in the city of Gold Beach.
Yeah. Oh,
We got, we have, I think another, one of the bigger issues here is that, there's other constituencies here. So I think there needs to be a way to communicate how the monies from TLT are benefiting the county as a whole.
well, if we increase tourism and bring a spot, because before all this started, the South Coast was becoming a destination for work vacations. For the longest time when it was in the chamber and stuff, and we were talking about just get people to stay here one more day. Well, if you get a work vacation, you get people to stay here 5 more days. They spread out. That money comes here. The economic impact is shown here. It spreads out. It goes throughout the county. A lot of people in Gold Beach go down to Brookings and take care of things and do it. Go to Port Orford. And a good example is how can an event not in my city help me? You remember the Country Music Festival up there? We had people staying from Bandon North all the way down to Crescent City to do that. So the entire county was impacted by that. If we have a facility that's large enough, we had to turn down a movie company after the movie 65 people came in and did that. They told them about us and used it. They didn't need more space. Well, that 37 days that the 65 movie company had, they dropped close to $1 million in the county. That's going to help everybody. That's going to help all the constituents to do that. So, and it's, we're talking about the unincorporated and on the unincorporated areas that are funding this to do that. So the last count I think it's like 104 something lodging facilities. But I think that the economic department and other things have found a few more because everybody had to get licensed using the state records that kind of showed up everything to do this. So it is beneficial. This is not a Gold Beach Convention Center. This is Curry County. And this board has been out, and we've actively been seeking South County and North County. And it's just as important we don't forget Agnes, Langlois. So this is a benefit for everybody. It's not just us, and that's what we're looking. We're not looking at.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not,
but that's how it's going to help them. Is
yeah,
we're going to bring that income in.
I also want to just point out that the original ordinance was developed by, it was developed with the fair in mind, and that's what got passed. So I'm just pointing. I'm not being.
No.
I just say everything. Okay, I just try.
No,
to
that's
say
fine.
Everything. So
Well, I guess the biggest opponent was a harbor lodging owner. He's the one that was fighting against it all the time. He's the one that came on board and helped us push us through and get it done.
Was he
So-
a harbor lodging running from Gold Beach?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, it was, oh, okay.
Well, I don't know if he wants me to say his name.
No, let's not.
But it was, and he was concerned. He was really concerned, everybody, and liked it. And he understood the impact of having an event center here to do it. Because let's be honest, we're talking about economy. It's great. We're talking about infrastructure and buildings to do, but it's not just buildings and infrastructure and a field that families gave up for the betterment of the county. There's memories and families. I mean, our manager was a little tote running around chasing pigs and sheep when she was in the fair. Now she's the manager of the fair manager of the fair. So it's memories and times and good. It's the feel and the aesthetic, and that's why people. It seems to be when something happens, people are passionate about the fairgrounds. And I said we don't consider ourselves, and we're definitely don't consider it's just this area. We consider ourselves the countywide, and try everybody is important.
So Bob, I appreciate your passion, but there's the fellow behind you has a
Yes,
really,
I
really
feel,
cool name, and
I feel his CAD program right behind me.
So before Spirit steps up to the mic and talks, I want to make a statement and then just kind of present the room with a question that was presented to me. So the statement that I want to make before I present the question is that what's really important to me here is we have a situation where the people in this county voted for something, and then it was changed. That bothers me. I'm uncomfortable with that. The people of this county had confidence in what they were voting for, and that was going to happen. And then elected people came in and changed it twice. I'm very uncomfortable with that, and I don't like it. Now, that being said, I've had people in South County reach out to me and say, what are you guys doing? Why is that money going to the fair? You could take the money that was going to the fair and you could put it into the Port of Brookings Harbor, and man, you could take that money and have an immediate impact, immediate attraction. You could have walking trails and biking trails, and you could have an attraction or an area for an event down there, and you could develop it in a very positive way that would become a area to be an attraction and bring in a lot of money for the county. And how come you guys don't do that? And that was a question that was presented to me, and not by just one person. And it came out as a result of some of the social media comments that were made, and it also came out during the what kind of started all this, the meeting that we had. So that's a question that I think is important to take into consideration as we discuss this. But also, I want to make it really clear where I stand on if the people voted for something, that's what should take place.
Yeah, and in all fairness too, and I understand the logic behind that, but the harbor has a $9 million budget. Without TLT, we have 100 and something thousand. We are a county asset, so we're just as important as everybody else. Secondly, and then if you just look at, they have I think it was $1.3 million in revenue. Would be nice to have that. All the money we get is just what we can rent to. I mean, we even have, there's so few groups out there doing things. We're having to rent our buildings to help putting these things on, hopefully that people will take them over again to do that. So that money's there. They are a taxing district. They get income. Take this away, we're back to $100 for the weekend. And hopefully fair is successful, because fair is what sustained the fairgrounds through the year, and that wasn't doing it. So yeah, I can see it, but they have stuff. They have a way of getting income to get to do it.
Actually, I don't think it's a fair comparison. It's a commercial port it's a
Exactly.
fishing port.
Yeah.
It's not fair at all. And they have trust me, I tried to run the place on the tax base they got. You don't want that tax base.
No.
The whole tax base was just enough to not quite pay their loan on their on their sport marina. So not a good tax base. Now, if it was the library, we could be talking something different.
I understand, but they do have a source of income that comes in. We just die without anything to do that. And as you see, just for a reference, I gave you guys each a copy of a 2000 survey of the buildings that needed repairing and stuff. And a lot of those things are still that way or a lot worse, and a couple of them have been repaired to do that. So, and I agree with you. I have an issue how it got changed. That's why we brought to do it. And I think it was of a lack of respect. And we did tell people that we would do our due diligence to stay involved. And if South County wants something, they can apply. It was set up to go to the committee and now the economic development part and to say, I have this project. One of the ways we thought of doing is Tillamook had a one-page grant program. You fill it out, say, here's what so if somebody down there has a great idea, because it was never meant to say Central County, who has 54 lodging facilities and 20-something lodging facilities in Port Orford, doesn't mean, well, Port Orford, you get this little amount. If somebody in Port Orford said, I have a great idea to do something, they're entitled to that part of the money. That's the other half that went to promotions and to the economic development to handle it. And I think they're doing a fine job getting that done. People haven't taken advantage of it, to be honest with you. I think that's more of an issue. It's like, it's out there. It's kind of like what we stood up and did something instead of telling somebody else, hey, can you get it done, and just leave it alone. That's why I just got to hear. But changing it, and I still see the value in the portion that was changed, because to me, I'd rather hire in-house to run my tourism economic package together to do that. And I think that's what they're doing in economic development. They're doing it well. They have an understanding of our area. We're working with Travel Oregon with them going through that. So it's been a lot. So it's been very efficient. But I agree. I think because that could be taken under that original documentation and funded that way to do that. So they still get their funding. They deserve that funding to have it done, get it done to do that. And we can still work. And then we're doing the same thing. We're following what the voters had said to do and gaining that, keeping that respect.
So, Bob, just to clarify, so you guys are okay with the second, the current structure of the current ordinance?
With the removing of that where it says event center account for capital improvement, they want to take that out. And I understand that.
I mean, yeah, if we had in the real world, take that out to do it, would love to see that, because now it's showing that they actually, and we respect and know and understand the sheriff's department. Now the sheriff's department get a bigger part of the pie than we did. It was set up for doing that, and I know they need it and understand that when it gets done. So we had a way to balance that out, if those numbers were the same, or go back to the original and find a way to fund it a different way. The major thing is the language that restricted us so you can't do to get it done. And I mean, we wouldn't actually be here today if the new language was this. Let's just take them out of it totally.
So would it be safe to say that we could just essentially, direct the director of operations to work with representation from the Fair Board and our current econ development group, representing them, to create appropriate language to present?
To modify to well, I think we need to
And then we can come back to a meeting and look at that language and.
okay, I can talk to him, and then maybe we can, because yeah, if there's a way that we could do I'd like to leave a lot of I mean, I think the voters voted that the commissioners have oversight on half the money going to the fair. That was the clear language. That was what you guys did. So then the other modifications, I think we could do that in a separate agreement. The Fair Board could work that out with the county themselves in that MOU. You could do that. And I would be way more comfortable sticking with the original agreement. And I know you're happy with it. I hate to tell you, you don't look like you're gonna live forever. Someday.
That's why I would like to see. I love that bond issue. I like to have that building built fast.
Right, exactly,
done.
and that's what. But down the road, somebody else. I'd like to say, I'd feel like we accomplished something by saying, hey, you know what? We don't like that. We don't like changing stuff we don't like changing stuff behind, And if you catch me doing it, you should, call me out, right? So. Now, I admit, when I first was presented with this, I saw that and I was like, when I first got here, I was like, so this is how people do stuff up here, huh? And then, well, because you could look at it and you're like, well, there's no legislative history. What's going on here? How did this happen? And so I was like, I am kind of a troublemaker. I must admit, all of this started because it was my idea, because I was like, you know what? just change it and see what happens. Cause I don't like that. And look what happened. We got it out. Now, if we go back to the original thing that the voters voted on, I was one of those people that voted on that. I'm a voter. And I get it that you guys did all the work and you developed it, and that is a thing that you invested, that, you know, everybody invested their time and the voters bought into that plan. So, you know, it's like when you pass a school bond and then you're halfway through, you're like, you know, we decided we're gonna build a Frisbee golf course instead of the new golf,
Yeah.
classrooms. You don't do that.
No.
So I think that if I really think that we get all that other stuff, and also I think it'll be much easier to get funding if we do it that way, where we just have, first of all, you got more money coming in directly, and then we can work out the funding, and you can get economic development to be paid for doing what they do through a separate, that MOU. You can modify the MOU, and we might think about, like moving into the, I don't know, the 19th century or something with some
That
of
close?
well, I mean, because I got to tell you that when you read the fair statutes, you're like, I have landed on another planet.
It is challenging, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I would recommend. I'll be happy to do that. We can work together and see if we can come up with something, and because I'd really like to go back to that, and then you can say, well, this is what the voters approved, so that's what we're doing. And then you modify it based on that, not saying, we actually know better than you, and we're gonna do a little few backdoor things, but you'll be happy, and look, you're still getting your money, so you're happy, right? And everybody's trying to be accommodating, but that's really not. It's not really the legislative process.
Yeah, because we even wrote in there about committees and oversights and who should have all that before it even gets to you guys to do this. So,
Right.
An appeals board, we had all this. So I would be happy, great, bring it back to original language. And I think it would, because first of all, there wasn't an emergency.
Right.
So that you have to deal with. And we just can't make these changes now and say, well, we're going to change it because it's not an emergency. So it makes it challenging to do that. But if you correct it in error, I think you can do that. At the same time, I think the way it's getting funding right now, when it's going, how they're staffing with the economic development, promotion, tourism part of the thing, that can be worked out within the brackets of what's already there.
Right.
So, and then you're not offended, and it's understanding, and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing to get this done.
I think we'll get more done going that route than.
All right, Bob, I'm gonna ask you to sit down, let somebody else talk.
Thank you.
You bet.
Gentlemen, Spirit Meller, I want to speak as a private citizen here today. First of all, thank you for what you're doing today. I appreciate the direction this is going. Appreciate Mr. Fitzgerald's perspective on this, Mr. Alcorn's commitment to that, and you other gentlemen as well. The biggest thing that has bothered me with this, which I spoke at when this first came up about restoring public trust, is, and you've identified it, whoa, we're just changing things the voters voted on. So I'm going to advocate for the restoring public trust piece here and the transparency. I don't know what the right answer is to the process, but if we have a ballot measure that the voters approve, it seems like a ballot measure should be changed by a ballot measure. So I don't know what the legalities of that are. The legal counsel can decide, but out of respect, the leaders can say, we're not going to change it without going with a ballot measure. If the voters want to change it, then let the voters change it. That would be a suggestion. On a much smaller scale, I still have not seen the original document, the ballot measure that was voted on. And I'm sure if I came down here and asked around, someone would give me a copy of it. But it would be nice if those kind of documents were part of the agenda packet for a workshop on the topic.
Okay.
Right? So if the public could go onto the Board of Commissioners website, see that there's a special meeting or a workshop, hit the packet, and have the backup documents to review, that would be a big step towards saying, hey, public, we're giving you the information. We're being transparent. We're not going to make you run down a rabbit trail and come down to the county and ask someone in the back office. to
Clerk's
try to
office
kick
and
off.
all that, yep.
Exactly.
Ted, that's not hard, is it?
No.
You didn't sound very
I
good.
got it. No, I mean, I've got it. I mean, it's there. These are ordinances that are. And I would, I mean, everybody, they directly affect the fair. Spirit Miller's an agent of the fair, so I think that, we actually, everybody can work together. I don't need to provide you the documents you've got, so.
Right. I feel like I have an inside scoop
You
here
do,
with
right.
this, but I'm speaking as a private
Yep.
citizen. Like, I'm trying to give you the perspective of somebody who's
Gotcha.
watching social media, looking at the website, not having to work too hard to find the information.
Spirit, I'm going to read you the ballot measure. Okay? This is a tax on guests who stay in local hotels and other lodging. By state law, 70% of the net county lodging tax collections are dedicated for tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities. 30% may be used to fund other county services. This measure may raise an estimated $602,000 for tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities, and approximately $258,000 for other county services. The tax would be imposed only in the unincorporated areas of the county and not in the cities. By state law, lodging operators may retain 5% of the tax collection for their own administrative costs. The Curry County Commissioners approved Curry County Ordinance Number 1901, imposing a 7% tax on lodging guests at hotels, motels, inns, bed and breakfast, condos, RV parks, campgrounds, vacation rentals, and other similar transient lodging facilities for stays less than 30 days. But this tax cannot be effective unless voters approve. This is not a tax on homeless people. This is not a tax to raise money to lodge homeless people.
Thank you.
So
That's
I hope that
really super helpful, actually.
so it's very nondescript. It is exactly what the ORS requires of TLT.
And was there a ordinance that was approving, that was already drafted and available for
1901.
review? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Two
Perfect.
of them, actually, the ordinance and then the implementation ordinance.
So what comes first? The ballot measure or the ordinance?
Ballot measure comes first.
They vote on it and then you write it and the
Yeah.
legal writes up, okay?
So if I understand correct, changing topics, thank you very much, Commissioner Trost. So I'm off the transparency thing. If I understand that correctly, the TLT county tax is only in unincorporated areas.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I want to transition to something Mr. Alcorn and I have talked about, which is the philosophy about, hey, why not prop this money into the Port of Brookings? Well, this tax is earned in the unincorporated areas.
That's Port of Brookings.
Port of Brookings is unincorporated.
Right, but nobody lives in the Port of Brookings.
A lot of people live in Port of Brookings, and a lot of people live on the harbor bench, way more than just about everywhere else.
It's actually the largest unincorporated area in the
So in fact, I guess
state of Oregon.
that's the real issue. The real issue is that we're,
Is Harbor incorporated or not?
no, it's not.
Harbor is not.
Harbor is
Okay.
not.
the largest
So
unincorporated
this-
area in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
So this ordinance takes money from other sections of the county and imports it into the city of Gold Beach.
Right.
Right, so
So
that's the issue.
Well, that's an issue, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I had talked to Mr. Alcorn about the last time around was we're going to have a philosophy discussion about that. It sounds like this conversation might be overcome by the events of, hey, we're going to go back to what the ordinance said and move on from there, which is great. But there is a philosophy discussion about we have a teardrop shape in terms of population, right? All the population's at the bottom of the county. But are we going to put all the resources where the population is at, or are we going to respect the geography? I went around with my wife on this over the electoral college, and are we going to represent the urban populace, or are we going to represent the geography? And we need to do both. I think at least that's how the American government is written. So I don't have anything to say, any recommendation on that, but I think it's an important philosophy discussion for the Board of Commissioners to have about how do you view leading the county? How do you view investing in the county? And I would probably advocate, I'm not unbiased. I live north of Gold Beach. I have a business office in Brookings. But bringing the county together with something in the middle is pretty awesome. And I think that was been a philosophy for a while, but it's a philosophy you guys are going to have to determine. And I love what we have. If you put all the investment down south, well, it's going to.
Well, there are other factors as well. There's also the fact that the property at the fair was is on was donated, you know, that's where it is. So that's it. That's it. I mean, we can do if we made some other choice, we would be abandoning that, and it would revert to the previous owner. So the reality is that's what we have to work with. But I think that I do think that it's I mean, this is not, you know, this is, some of us have had these ideas earlier that we should try to, you know, it should be activities, you know, when you're in the tourism business, you're trying to attract people to the area, and the idea is to keep them there as long as you can, or until they have no more money, and then they have to go home. But when they go home, you want them to be happy, and then they come back when they save up a little bit more money. So a lot of that would be, I mean, this is just it's a kind of a culture shift for, you know, historically, I've grown up here, you know, I've known, you know, there are these divisions between our communities, and some of them are more real than you'd think. I mean, they're maybe a little less so now, but Brookings has always been kind of less organized, and it's had more of a turnover population, and from a person who's not from Gold Beach can be a really militant group, and they vote as a group, and they act together. Well, they're a voting bloc that is successful, as evidenced by this. This was a undertaking, a political undertaking that was successful because it was well organized and well executed. So that happened. So we don't need to pretend it didn't happen. That's how it goes. But at the same time, if we can make people want to come to Curry County and stay in a, you know, like, for example, the idea of an event center is a great idea, and if you can coordinate that with events going on at the Port of Brookings Harbor, for example, or if you could do something in Port Orford, the true deal would be to sucker people in here so they'd say, like you were talking about, a long vacation, but anytime you can add a 2-day stay to a 3-day stay, that you make a lot more money. And since this is a public meeting, I won't use my usual description of.
Well, you already said
tourism.
sucker 'em in, so I don't know if we can get any worse.
And Spirit, just to clarify my comments, I wanted to share with the people here today that question that was posed to me, to express the way some of the people in other parts of the county are thinking. I'm not advocating for one or the other, but I did receive that question pretty passionately.
Sure.
In fact, a person went on to say you'd get a lot more bang for your buck if you would do this, and you're responsible. You know, we voted for you because you're responsible for oversight over the county money, and you know, we're not getting the bang for our buck that we should get. And we had a discussion about that, and that's why I want to share it with everybody in the room today. What I am advocating for, though, is when the people of this county vote for something, they should get what they voted for. I am advocating for that.
Thank you all for the direction you're moving. I do believe going back to the ordinance that was voted for will be a big deposit in the public trust account. Thank you.
Come on up, Caitlin.
Not as tall as all these other people. First, like Spirit said, thanks for just doing the background that needs to be done. You know, I wasn't involved when this TLT went through, but I have been at the fairgrounds for the last couple of years trying to figure out the best ways to get the best bang for our buck and put this and make this happen so that it is a community asset. But, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the fairgrounds with TLT, and I think that's simply because, you know, there is a portion that's allocated specifically to us. However, I think because there is a specific section that goes specifically to the fairgrounds, it's often forgot that there's just as much sitting there available to be used by other aspects of the county. You know, we get 50% of that 70% according to the original ordinance, and with the new one, I think it comes to 40% comes to 28% or something. But there's still that whole other 50% that's available to be used. And I think that, you know, the Port of Brookings is a fantastic place that does have a lot of opportunities to do things like trails and things. I think that Port Orford has a lot of options with their Buffington Park and the rest stop there that is growing and doing more things. And I think that, like you said, if we can develop this convention center here in the center where we can tie in with events on both ends and push people, to both sides of the county in connection with what we're doing, that's where the key is. And one of my goals since I very first started, when I first applied, and I told my board when I interviewed, was that I want to see the fairgrounds become a community asset. It's important to me that we do engage and that we break down some of these walls that council is talking about. We do have very divided towns in a community that when you put all of us together, we're still really small. And there's no reason for us to be so divided. And we really do need to continue to work together and push those walls down so that we do the right thing for all of us. Because the more that we all succeed, the more that each of us succeeds. And that's really important to me, and it always has been. I was born and raised here, like Bob said. My grandma was a fair queen. I was a fair princess. I grew up doing 4-H. I have been on those grounds a long time, so I am very passionate, and I fully believe that there's people in Brookings that are just as passionate about their stuff, and that's how we should be. We should be passionate. We should fight for the things that we're invested in, but we also still have to be open about those conversations about how do we all benefit together. And what can we do together to make these things happen? And I do believe that the event center and convention center will help community-wide. And, I think that transparency is extremely important. And I think that, the talk about, the oversight from the commissioners, I don't think any of our board has any problem with that. We've been very clear that what we're trying to do is pretty much all capital improvement. Those grounds are falling apart, and our goal is to bring it up and make it happen and make it usable. But to make it usable, we also still have to be able to pay the bills and pay the staff in the meantime until we can get those incomes. And then once we've got ourselves done, those TLTs open up for more projects too, because we don't necessarily need them at that point. So then the ordinance can be amended again to either open it up for always just having applications or dedicate it somewhere else. But we got to find a way to do it all together.
Yep.
And that's what it comes down to. And I think it's important to remember that just because we are a designated section doesn't mean that there's not other funding available for projects right now. And so I know that we get a lot of focus just because our name is in it, but there is still money that people can apply for. And I think it's important that people do so, because I know that it doesn't necessarily get well known that it is available. And some people that could benefit from it may not know that it is available to use. So.
Very well said. Anybody else would like to public comment?
We've got a couple of our mayors here.
Yeah, we do.
So they are always gracious at their meetings and let me talk, so
Yeah,
love to hear from either of you.
if you want. No pressure. I do know that at the last city council meeting I was at, Ron said, "John, would you come up here?" No, it's okay. I'm not gonna do it. You don't have.
Thank you for being gracious.
You're welcome.
I could take this thing to a different twist. And I'm thinking, I hear you, we need to do the right thing and be equitable throughout the county and spread the money out so that everybody gets a piece of the cake. I'm thinking to myself that in a family, Dad says, we got a little money to go take a vacation, and immediately there's going to be an argument. Let's go to Disneyland. Let's go to Hawaii. Let's go here and there. All the money's gone. In fact, you're going to borrow some money to make this happen. But then Dad finally says, wait a minute. He said, I got to tell you something. I need $400 for new tires on the car, because without the tires on the car, we go nowhere. Okay? I was involved in asking the county to establish TLT funds. I'm going to take a guess, back in 2013, somewhere in that area. County didn't have TLT, cities have TLT, and that gave a subsidiary amount of money to county hotels. Money in their pocket, subsidizing them. I felt it'd be fair if there was an even TLT tax throughout the whole county. What are you gonna do with this TLT money? The tires on the car here is the sheriff's department. Wouldn't it be great to equalize the TLT throughout the county so that county unincorporated areas not got a fair advantage, an advantage over cities? Just putting the thoughts together. But that money needs to go someplace because sure enough, we have already in the past had 2 or 3 ballot measures to help the sheriff's budget out fail. And sure enough, down the road, we're going to have some more. If you're taking in money here and then you're spending it, but you're not putting it on the tires on the car, you may never get a ballot measure still through that's going to get the money to the sheriff where it's needed.
So, real quick, Mayor, so just so the parameters of the ORS, right? So 5% can be utilized for administration, right? Remaining, so 30% can be used basically general fund. 70% has to go to
Stop
tourism.
a minute, Jay. I understand all that. So, and I know how the law reads. Brookings is different, by the way. It's 70-30, just the opposite of your 70-30.
70 goes to the police?
70 goes to the general fund.
Oh, okay.
Because we were grandfathered in before the ordinances or the ORSs were built.
Oh,
So we have an advantage already. We got a big general fund amount coming in, and we spend a small amount in tourism stuff. So it's just the opposite. But that's not my point. My point is, we are currently in Brookings right now looking at a possible inflow of more revenues. And I'm trying to convince our city council, if you get some money coming in here that you hadn't been expecting for the last few years, you need to reduce taxes and costs to your taxpayers on another side of this thing. Otherwise, the day comes when you have to ask for money on a ballot measure that, now you got all this, you spend it. The more money you get, the more you spend, and now you're back here asking us for more money. The TLT funds should have been promoted to the state to allow a greater portion of those TLT funds to go to the sheriff. I believe there was some measures going through. They're not measures, called at the state. I forget what they're called, to tell you the truth.
Like bills, house
Bills, thank you. I think they failed because I lost track of keeping up with it. I still think that I would go along with the county commissioners and elected officials of the county and elected officials of the other cities to ask the state to push a bill through so a greater portion of that TLT funds goes to the sheriff. You guys can think about it however you want, but I still believe that that's where a great portion of that money should go.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Any questions for Ron? Tammy's gonna come and speak. You shamed her into it, Ron.
Maybe I wanted him to speak first.
Yeah, there you go.
Tammy Kaufman, Mayor, Gold Beach. Thank you. I did want to address, Mr. Fitzgerald said that it's a facility in Gold Beach, and it sounded like we own it or something. We don't. The Fairburn owns it. You guys don't know that, but I want to make sure that's clear. It's not our facility. We support the concept of continuing it, and if the land was never donated, it wouldn't be there. It'd be somewhere else. And it's a strange place for fairgrounds. I mean, it's right on the beach.
Yeah.
Which means it's a wonderful place to be on the Ferris wheel and get to see those views, but it's also extremely caustic with the salt.
Right.
Things really wear out faster, and that's why they need the capital money to fix things regularly. And, unfortunately, governments are really bad at taking care of things because we always have these big operating holes, and so we don't have reserve funds like other entities do to fix it. Oh, we got to replace the roof in 30 years, so we need to save, 1 out of 30 every year to do that. Thankfully, the city of Gold Beach does a pretty good job of having reserve funds, and we try to take care of our facilities, and that's why we decided to help the fairgrounds, the fair board, with their capital projects, because we know it's an important facility in our area. I agree with what everybody is saying about transparency. This is what the voters voted for. But there is one thing that was really different when that ballot measure went through than the other ballot measures. There were not two motels that purposely went against it. Prior to that, there were two outside of the city limits that paid a marketing campaign against those ballot measures. And those had both sold, and the new owners didn't care. So that was one of the factors of why it passed. There wasn't a strong opposition. And I am in favor of continuing to support the Fair Board. And if you want to change, you might consider destination marketing and destination places, because it's my understanding that's the next thing, is when there's a destination, which the conference center is one of the ideas, then that is why people come to a place. And we've actually are starting to set aside some funds for that. Most of our money goes to marketing, and we spend some money on visitor center for our lodging tax, and some tourist things, and we do the floats, but we do a lot of money on marketing, and we have a professional that decides where that money should go. And so that's a lot of reason why tourists come here, and I encourage you to consider marketing as well. I think you already do that, and that's part of what that 15% that goes to your department. I think that's the number. I could be wrong. So, I agree that you shouldn't change ballot measures, but sometimes they're written poorly, and you got to fix them. So it just kind of depends on the actual situation. Does it need to be corrected? Has something changed dramatically? Doubtful in a year it changed dramatically that you needed to make that change. So, but you are elected to represent the public and do the right thing, and I trust you to do that. But thank you. You have any questions?
No, thank you, Tammy.
Thanks.
Any other public comment? Bob? Okay, the clock is on, Bob.
Sit down. And just for clarification too, that we did see what those other TLT proposals were, and that's why we brought it together. And a lot of it was for funding for this, and this is what the people wanted. This is what we explained. And in all honesty, every available dollar that could be spent under statute is given to the sheriff's department. So that gets done. And this was the only, all these other levies and taxes and stuff years before involved residents paying more money. This was the one part of the community that comes in here that doesn't help fund the region. So that's why it was successful. That's why it gets done, and we're doing that. So we understand that process, and that's why we made sure we included the sheriffs, because their impact on tourism, what's going to happen for doing that. And once again, it was zero impact on the residents. When we go, quite frankly, it's 7% that we match, 7%, so we match the cities. You go to the Central Valley, you're paying 18% because they play city and county within the city for taxes. So I think we're fair, getting a little bit help back, and we're reinvesting. And once again, the idea of the convention center and building it up is to bring people here. We will bring them here. Now, we got them in the build here. It's up to you to have them knock on your door. So have an event, have something going on, have a reason for them to come to Brookings, have a reason for them to come to Agnes, have a reason to go to Port Orford. You know, we've got the people here. Now they're closer. They're an hour drive. They're not 5, 6, 8 hour drives anymore. So that's what we're trying to do, build it up so we can develop the entire county to do this.
Thank you. Anybody besides Bob want to talk? Commissioners?
I think I like the original idea and have, direct Ted to work with, put together,
Direct?
a proposal to come back to potentially vote on.
Yeah, I wanna support what the voters voted for.
So you have direction, council, right?
I have direction.
Brad, any additions? Anything else to? Dale? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We're gonna, after you folks leave, we're gonna.
I could leave.
Nope, we're gonna have, we're gonna have a quick executive session. Thank you all for coming. We'll take a 10-minute break, or let's just say 4:30, or 2:30, 14:30.
I'm like, what? Great.
Let's just say next Wednesday.
14:30, so 2:30.